Honourable Member for St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to introduce the new issue into this debate, the issue of funding of tuition fees for Barbadian students at the University of the West Indies. This is where the two parties have a clear philosophical divide. In the budget of 2013, the Honourable Finance Minister said that this policy would save an estimated $42 million. Now, let us start, sir, by agreeing that Barbados could never, ever afford the cost of free tertiary education. Don't let's fool ourselves. Never in the history of Barbados could that be afforded. But yet, the Right Excellent Errol Barrow and all successive prime ministers thought that it was important enough to develop the human capital of Barbados, something that we have hitherto been known for, something which we exported throughout the world as very intelligent, highly educated Barbadians, something that made our nation attractive to foreign direct investment and to international business companies building up a new economic territory of this country. All previous governments of Barbados, both the LP and BLP, found it fit, even though we could not afford it as a small developing nation, to find the money to fund tuition fees for Barbadian students. And quite rightly so, because 80% of those who were going to the University of the West Indies stemmed from working class Barbadian backgrounds and would not have had the opportunity to go to university if that were not so. As I've said before, 13 of the 16 members of Parliament on the DLP side may very well not be here, would not have probably been able to go to the University of the West Indies without that, because none of them are Barbados scholars or exhibition winners. There are only 2 out of the 16 who were born with gold spoons in their mouth. The Honourable Member for St. Michael's South Central being one, growing up in a gated community. Outside of that, sir, the Honourable Finance Minister in that budget speech in 2013 said that the mechanisms would be made to ensure that no deserving person is denied access to university education because of the means of their parents. But yet the consequence of the imposition of tuition fees on Barbadian students has meant a decline of 40%, 40%, in Barbadian students going to the University of the West Indies since the imposition of tuition fees. The Barbadian student population has declined by about $8,000 down to below $5,000 and still declining. You yourself, sir, would know about a student in your constituency who only this term had to drop out of the University of the West Indies because of lack of access of funding. And I know, sir, because you intervened on his behalf to the Ministry of Education, and just like I did, your constituent, and you haven't got a response. That's the kind of callous attitude of the Ministry of Education because of the management of it, of this Minister of Education. In that budget speech, 2013, the Honourable Finance Minister also said that he would outline to the student revolving loan fund scheme, or it would have been outlined, to ensure adequate access of loans with attractive repayment terms are available, and the Ministry of Finance would in the coming week work with local finance houses to establish a national registered education savings plan with appropriate tax allowance provisions for savers. That has not been done, sir. In other words, the minister was proposing, and he said he would have carried out in August 2013, a tax allowance scheme for education facilities, something which in fact the Right Honourable Member for St. Peter spoke about, but that was never done. Rather than that, the government came the next year, that the same finance minister, and removed the tax allowance for donations to your school by former students. Or if you could only make that one donation and not to churches or any other charitable institution or non-governmental organization. That is the type of credibility that this Democratic Labour Party has brought to the governance of this country. If the Right Excellent Errol Barrow were to be resurrected from his watery grave today, he would be totally ashamed of those who occupy the corridors of power in the name of his party. He would disassociate himself fully from them because this was his major legacy. It has totally messed up the and put a curtailment in the educational progress of a large number of Barbadians. And it wasn't that they were not paying before, they were already paying $1,000 in amenity fees and ID cards, student guilds. And this is wrong. Totally. Then subsequently, in June last year, during the budget of last year, the Minister of Finance proposed to establish scholarships and grants, 2015, 2 years ago, scholarships and grant programs to aid in the adjustment process of this. And the government was to have partial tuition grants and full tuition scholarships of $2.5 million in the 2015-16 academic year, going to $5 million in this current financial year, and then $7.5 million in the year that will start 1st of next month. That has not been done because still many students unable to access these grants and scholarships, and again having to drop out of the University of the West Indies. Extremely shameful of a cabinet who were able to rise to the top of the ladder and become the political leaders of this country and thereafter kick down the ladder. The Honorable Minister of Education as well spoke about bursaries, and those bursaries took over a year to come. Bursaries non-existent, again students dropping out, having taken the credibility of the Honorable Minister of Education at honor. And then we spoke about grants, and those grants were not realized either. As the Honorable Member for St. George North said yesterday, this is the legacy of the longest serving Minister of Finance in the history of this country. A legacy of the dismantlement of free tertiary education in this country. Shameful, appalling. And one can only imagine why he suffered 2 downgrades by the Honorable Prime Minister, having been de facto Deputy Prime Minister before 2011 and leader of government business in the last session. But this is the kind of backward thinking and myopic thinking of the Democratic Labour Party to save $42 million which should have been found somewhere. And we have told the Democratic Labour Party how that money could have been founded. First, you taxed the people of Barbados too much. From the first budget of the late David Thompson, $106 million, and consequently 35 to 36 new or increased taxes, taking money out of the economy that should still have been there. Corruption and spiritual wickedness in high places costing the taxpayers of this country, because corruption is a tax on the taxpayers. Failure to reform the debt reprofiling that we in the Barbados Labour Party and the economists of this country have been talking about for 4 years ought to have been done by the government of Barbados. Enhancing productivity, which the Honourable Leader of the Opposition spoke about as recently as in her speech to the Chamber of Commerce, which I laid as a document of the House a couple of days ago. How to increase productivity in the productive sectors in this country, to get more out of what we are doing, for government to become more efficient. All of those have been put on the table because honourable members asked how we could have found the money. All of that we could have done. Could have rationalized tertiary education. The Barbados Labour Party had put on the table a University College of Barbados, bringing in as one the Barbados Community College, the Eardiston Teachers College, the Samuel Jackman Prescott, the rationalization of those educational institutions would have saved costs rather than having separate board of governors and all of that for each one. You know, all of this fundamental difference, and the University of the West Indies, $200 million in debt owed by the Barbados government after the administration of the Right Honourable Member for St. Peter left a surplus of $250,000 in at the University of the West Indies when it demitted office in January 2008. Singapore, for example, which is universally recognized as probably the leading country in the world in terms of competitiveness and productivity. In Singapore, every citizen over 25 gets money to spend on any one of or any group combination of 500 approved courses. That is what progressive countries and leaders with vision do, rather than what has been done here. A complete disgrace to the memory of the Right Excellent Errol Barrow, who in the 1968 University of the West Indies graduation ceremony said the university represents our best path to progress. We're talking about pathways to prosperity. That is what Errol Barrow said. The university represents our best path to prosperity. Way back in 1968. At the same graduation ceremony, Sir Arthur Lewis, Nobel Prize winner, we must train every talent we possess or condemn ourselves to poverty. This Democratic Labour Party stands shamed, and certainly those, the electorate will deal with it for that. Sir Hilary Beckles speaking about how that policy has set Barbados, especially the Barbadian woman, back 20-25 years. Henderson Carter saying that Barbadians have paid for free university education. Our ancestors paid for that through slavery and all the deprivations of colonial times. No scholarships for the disabled at University of the West Indies. You don't even protect the most vulnerable in society. And the Honourable Minister of Social Care, again still promising that we are on the cusp of disabilities legislation, when he ought to know that that does not collide with the truth, because the monitoring committee that was set up has not been given any secretarial or research resources that it could produce a report that will allow the government then to form that legislation. So devoid of ideas on progression and legislative rights for persons with disabilities that the government is on.
Honourable, please wrap up.
School meals, sir, another issue, and I would, if you allow me, sir, just touch briefly on that. Another issue where I wrote the Honourable Minister of Education, letter dated 29th of February, secretly private and confidential letter handed to him in here, on the position of Lancaster School Meals Centre, because we on this side had received information, and the Honourable Leader of the Opposition and I agreed that we didn't want to make this public. We are Barbadians, patriotic, and we were trying to help the Honourable Minister. Handed the letter to him. I handed him in here through the marshals, letting him know that they had a serious health issue there at Lancaster with rats that could easily affect the health of the workers, the health of the children. But yet, in December, you open the paper, Lancaster School Meals just down the road from me, and whole chaos break out. Rats all running all about the place. The Minister of Education having done nothing whatsoever about the information we gave him. And that's a caring government.
Has expired.
That is the height of callousness, sir, which envelopes
I remember your time
the Minister of Education. I thank you, sir.
Okay.